in Isadora, you gave us a remarkable performance. What do you think about dancing?
Well, it would be better to say what you feel about dancing, because the thing about dancing is that it's a tremendous struggle, and out of that struggle comes great joy. And the history of dance is the history of millions of people over some billions of years expressing their life and their death, their struggles, their combats, their achievements and their sorrows in dance and as well as in song. In Isadora, the two most important dances I had, and they were difficult, and I think I made a primitive effort, was the dance of the Russians, the Russian working class and peasantry emerging from slavery under the Tsarist autocracy to winning the revolution. And I had to express this in a dance, and I had to conceive this dance together with my coach, as well as carry it out. When I was 6 years old, my father enrolled me in a dancing school, a good dancing school. And from that time, I worked seriously and I worked hard. And I learned, first of all, how to continue when you think you cannot continue, because in classical ballet, the training is very rigorous, it's very repetitive, and it is very, very rigorous on energy. You have to repeat many, many times, many movements. And just at the point of having completed perhaps 40 times a very strenuous exercise, we would have to repeat that another 40 times. And you discover, and I learned then, that you can do what you think you can't do. Mm-hmm. And that in trying to do it, you create the conditions for your body to be able to do it. So this was the first and most important lesson, as well as the discipline of doing it whether you feel like it or not. And I found this discipline very valuable, particularly when I went later into the theatre, that to not allow myself, and to know how to not allow myself to be dominated by my own moods or anybody else's moods, how to carry out quietly, calmly, urgently what you have to do. And there are other lessons also in singing, which is just another form of expression. And I learnt with a teacher who was a coach to opera singers. He was a practical teacher, and he also did a great deal of work with actors. And I learnt from him how to learn not to impose upon my voice sounds in my ear or in my head that I thought were appropriate sounds that I would like to make. And I learnt this through his approach to singing, which was that singing was merely a higher form of speaking. All that you basically required for singing was to be feeling and thinking more deeply and more profoundly about what you were singing than when you were speaking. And when I was working on Isadora, now Isadora was an important woman. She revolutionized dance. She was able to revolutionize dance because she studied nature, and she discovered, therefore, that nature is revolutionary. And she tried to express nature in her dance, as well as concepts. And she tried to express music rather than impose concepts upon music, which was in itself a revolution at that time. Starting with today, how do we see the importance of the work of the last 4 days? What do we begin with today? Penny, would you like to say something?
Is training our senses in order to grasp all the developments that are taking place.
Why do we have to train our senses? We know we've got 5 senses. Why do we have to train them?
We have to train them because it's only through analysing and grasping every change in the situation that we can carry out the job that we're here to do.
Yes, but why isn't this automatic? Why do we consciously have to train?
Well, the separation of theory from practice under capitalism. And it goes on all the time, and unless we train ourselves to see the connection between theory and practice, and see that that theory comes from practice. And originally,
yeah, go on.
Man started from ignorance, and out of ignorance grew knowledge, but that was only through a sensuous activity of man's practice.
What was man's practice?
Well, it was a struggle against nature, it was a struggle to survive, initially.
And what is man's relationship with nature under the capitalist system? Why must we start with nature?
Because nature is...
Why don't we start with what we're thinking?
Because nature is primary, and man is in unity with nature and in conflict with it as well, being in the unity. And if we don't start studying the primary thing, which is nature, we won't understand man's thinkings, which is derived from nature. In order to understand man's thinking, we have to go back to nature, from where he comes, actually.
I think at the moment that Britain is doing nothing to help the tension of the international situation for these reasons.
The first political activity, in the sense that many people understand it, was when I joined in 1961, when I joined the Committee of 100, which was a section of the movement that was fighting nuclear warfare.
Yes.
It was a movement that was led by Bertrand Russell. And I joined this movement because I was convinced that the nuclear warfare threatened the lives of millions of people, and that on no account must nuclear bombs be used. And it seemed to me at that time a gigantic protest should be made. This movement approached me and asked me if I would join it, and would take part in a campaign of what they called civil disobedience, of rallying massively in Trafalgar Square and staying there until we were moved. And that they said, we'll fill the jails, we'll block all the jails, we'll paralyze everything, and this will be a means to stop nuclear war. At the time I was about 25. So I joined this movement. And I got arrested and fined a number of times, spent a number of nights in prison and so on, with a number of other writers and film people who were also taking part in this protest.